This next book is one that will haunt you long after you have closed the cover. It's one of those books that when you get to the twist at the end, it makes you want to go back to the beginning and reread it. It is called Foe. It is by author Iain Reid, and the movie rights were snapped up even before this hit bookshelves this week. Iain Reid is in our studio this morning, going to wade through the book with us without giving too much away. Good morning to you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, first of all, set up this story for us. What is Foe about?
Yeah, it's sort of an unusual book. It's about a young married couple who live a quiet existence on their farm, and their life is thrown into disarray one evening when a stranger arrives out of the blue, and he has some news that could potentially be life-altering that he delivers to them, and he says that he will be potentially returning in a few years. And so then it takes a bit of a turn after he leaves. So,
where did the inspiration come? Essentially, the book focuses on these three characters, which means you can really dive into them.
Yeah.
But where did this idea come from of a stranger just showing up?
I think it actually started sort of before even the plot was known, or before I knew about the characters of the story. My brother works in the space industry, and I'd been, talking to him a lot about space and wanting to use him as a resource for a story for a long time. And when I had the idea for this sort of couple, I knew that maybe this could also be the book that I wrote about space. And I think because for me, Foe is about this marriage and the confinement of this marriage, and I thought that sort of played nicely with the idea of space. And so I talked to him a lot, and I wanted it to be authentic. If there was going to be elements of space in this book, I'd been to see movies with my brother before, and he can always, if the movie involves space, he can always sort of start poking holes in the authenticity of what's happening. So I knew if I did write about space, I could make it authentic at least, right? Knowing that he would give it the okay.
When you have a book like this, Iain, where we alluded to the fact that there's a twist at the end, as an author, do you start at the end and then craft the story, or does it find its way?
Yeah, I don't actually. I sort of, for me, I start with the ideas. There has to be some ideas that I know I'll be interested in and be able to write about for a few years, which is usually how long it'll take me to write a book. And then I just start writing. So I don't even write an outline. I kind of know where I want the story to go. Mm-hmm. But for me, writing the story is how I know it. So I'm always surprised that authors who write outlines, and I think that's more common, that people will sit down and plan it and know the end and then start writing. But I always question that. I think, how can you write an outline to a story you don't know? And for me, I know the story by writing about it. So.
This has been described as the kind of book that you just don't ever want to put down and read it straight through. Do you want people to binge read your book, or do you want them to take time like you did and sort of be thoughtful about exploring it?
I would say I'm just grateful for anybody who, there are so many things to occupy people's time. And if someone says that they pick up this book and they, binge through it in one sitting, I'm delighted by that. So that I think that's very nice. If they, sit down with it and reread pages, and I really, either way, it's just I'm grateful for people who take the time to read it. So.
They're buying the book.
Yeah, and if they're thinking about what the book's about, I appreciate it.
All right. Well, somebody who loved this book was Charlie Kaufman. He picked up the rights, and he did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This was a huge compliment, I think, to a writer to have somebody like Charlie Kaufman say, "This is a story I want to put into film."
Yeah, it's that part of it has been very surprising for me. Anything on the film side. I am a movie fan. I love, going to the cinema and
being John Malkovich and Eternal Sunshine are two of my favorites.
Me too. And I didn't anticipate that. This was when I sat down to write this book and my previous book. I didn't think I wasn't thinking about the film rights, I was just sort of focused on working on the story. So it really became a pleasant surprise when there was some film interest, and it's that side of it has been a new world for me. I'm learning a lot about that side of things, so it's been fun.
So you're co-producing this movie, but can we talk about your family for just a second? You've mentioned your brother already.
Yeah.
He has this interesting story of being stuck in his space shuttle, which I would love to hear. But before you tell me that story, your sister has actually also been on the show because she's the First Lady of Iceland.
Yeah, it's very strange. Yeah, she became the First Lady of Iceland a couple years ago, actually when my first book was coming out, right around that same time. And her husband is an academic in Iceland, and he people had suggested that he run for president in Iceland, and they kind of laughed it off at first, but then he decided to run, and he won. And I can remember when my last book came out, getting a call from, I think, a CBC producer, and I thought, oh, this is great. They're going to ask me about my book. And really, they wanted my sister's email address because they were interested in the Icelandic election. So
we're going to take that story about your brother getting caught in the space shuttle onto our social media because I want to make sure that our viewers hear it. But thank you so much for being here, Iain, and congratulations.
Thank you for the interest.
All right. The title of the book is Foe. Make sure you pick it up.